Perfection, Prayer, and Personal Experiences by Mark Smith, jcnotforme.com. There are different tactics one can use when having discussions with Christians. One tactic is head-to-head arguments. Christians tell us to believe the Bible. We don't. And then we tell them in detail why the Bible is wrong. But there are times when maybe it's best to take a different tactic, run with their ideas, and for the sake of argument, believe the Bible, and thus give birth to the strange sight of non-believers now trying to get believers to believe their own Bible. I call this tactic intellectual judo. Judo is said to provide maximum efficiency with minimum efforts, not by resisting a charging opponent head-on, but by using the opponent's own weight and momentum against him, leveraging him to lose his balance. Intellectual judo is to not oppose their ideas, but rather use the momentum of their ideas against them. We do this by agreeing with them, then taking those ideas to their logical conclusions, something most Christians have never done. This tactic will be illustrated with three topics that are near and dear to most Christians: perfection, prayer, and personal experiences. Christians claim their God is perfect. They have said that their God, quote, does not make mistakes, even little ones, from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And Dr. Hugh Ross, on his website, whom I debated a few years ago, is quoted to have said that God is infinitely perfect. The best quote, however, and the one to run with to its logical conclusion, comes from a group called Omega Faith. Their website claims there is no way in which God could ever be better. Okay, we can go along with that. Now, let's see where it leads. No way in which God can be better? This is sort of like a situation of perfect balance. Changing anything destroys the perfection of the balance, and the whole thing falls apart. There is no way you can make this balance any better, only worse. It is perfect. Any actions whatsoever will destroy the perfection of the balance. Here's a situation. After much tossing and turning, she's finally achieved the perfect position, and now she's ready to drift off into sleep. Every part of her body is incredibly comfortable, and she's wishing this moment could last forever. But, as we all know, it never does. Something always happens. An itch needs scratching, a cramp needs stretching, she reaches to adjust a cover that's a hair off, and the moment is gone. Why? Because any attempt at improving perfection, an impossible goal, destroys perfection, and she'll never get it back that night, for once the perfect equilibrium has been disturbed, things can only get worse. How much worse? This much. As Homer Simpson illustrates the logical conclusion of God is perfect and there is no way God can be better. Imagine it's 10 trillion zillion years ago, way before the in the beginning of Genesis. Picture Homer as the perfect, eternal, and almighty God, dwelling in a perfect environment, being neither hungry or full, cold or hot, bored or thrilled. He has no itches to scratch, no beds to make, no to-do list on the wall, no loneliness to cure, and no desires to fulfill. A perfect Homer has no wants or needs, not even the need for love, worship, or adoration, and therefore he would do nothing forever. For if anything ever were done, being that he's already at the top, the only way left to move is down into imperfection. Homer cannot improve what is already perfect to make it any better. And since he's perfect, he would likewise not do anything to make it worse. Therefore, since he is the sole object in all existence and he is perfect, there would be no change, positive or negative. There would be no actions. There would be no creations from all eternity to all eternity. A blogger by the name of Chad Docterman summed it up well. He wrote, "What did God do during that eternity before he created everything? What disturbed the eternal equilibrium and compelled him to create? Was he bored? Was he lonely? If something is perfect, it is complete. It needs nothing else. If God is perfect, there is nothing he needs, nothing he desires, and nothing he must or will do. A God who is perfect does nothing except exist. A perfect Creator God is therefore impossible." Thus, taking the Christians at their word, what we're left with is a celestial pet rock that does nothing 24/7. Claiming they have a God that is perfect leads us to the logical conclusion of a God who can do nothing, say nothing, create nothing, and change nothing. One simple thought experiment leaves the Christians with an incapacitated God who could never have created the universe, can answer no prayers, and provides no personal experiences for anyone. This is the power of intellectual judo, of using the Christians' own claims against them. And it didn't take one Bible verse to do it. All it took was thought, thinking things through. Prayer. The power of prayer. We oftentimes hear that from Christians, and variations of it from Fox News, especially after one of God's tornadoes somehow forgot to kill every single child in a school or a home. For the sake of argument, let's agree with the claims about the power of prayer. About explosive power of prayer. About their ask and you shall receive aspect of prayer. And especially about their prayer changes things refrain. These are all claims that, for the sake of argument, we can assume are true. Jesus said, "Ask, and it shall be given." This offer had no strings attached, no fine print at the bottom, and no disclaimers. It's wide open. So let's grant them it's true. And since it's true, we don't need to argue with them. Instead, let's use their momentum and run with this idea and put it to good use. They certainly must believe Jesus here, and they're commanded to pray. So let's have them pray $1 million to arrive into our bank account before midnight. After they are done with their verbal gymnastics, their excuses, and telling you what Jesus really meant, because they can read his mind, of course, I suspect that evening, when they are alone, your intellectual judo, without a single argument or debate, just might start to eat at them and lead them to see for themselves that maybe, just maybe, Jesus wasn't entirely truthful here. They will have come to this conclusion in their own mind, on their own time, And as we all know, discovering things for oneself is always better than being argued into it. This is another quote from the Bible of the power of prayer that we can run with, no arguments or debates necessary. Christians, if sick, are commanded to, quote, send for the church elders who will pray for them, and this prayer made in faith will heal the sick, end quote. Note that it says not maybe or might, but an unequivocal will heal the sick. So for the sake of argument, we'll agree with our Christian friend, for this is really great news. Christians, with a little prayer and ceremony in the comfort of their own houses, will be cured of any and all sickness, with no doctor or medical bills to deal with. That is such great news that you'll want to take your Christian friend out to celebrate. Just be sure that on your way to celebrate, you drive by some of these Christian hospitals and maybe innocently ask, what are those buildings for? By doing so, you have just scored some more points in your intellectual judo without a single argument or disagreement. Another power of prayer to mention to your Christian friends is this one from Jesus. Quote, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it might move, maybe be moved. Hell no. That damn mountain will be moved, and nothing will be impossible for you. Move mountains? Nothing impossible? That's great news. But do Christians actually believe it? Yes, apparently they do. Now, without telling your Christian friend why, bring them out to where a mountain is blocking someone's potentially beautiful view of the ocean. Knock on the door and share the good news of what Jesus promised the Christian with you could do. And after that mountain has been moved, remembering Jesus also said, nothing will be impossible. Take your friend to a children's cancer ward and have him cure every last child there. You are not doing anything bad by doing these things. You are not even arguing. You are merely believing the words of Jesus and putting them into action. You are using intellectual judo to follow Jesus' promises, and they will be able to make their own conclusions. Christians believe God is an all-knowing God. For the sake of argument, let's follow this claim to its logical conclusion. All-knowing would mean that a zillion years ago, he already knew every minuscule detail of every future event. But that in itself also means he is helpless to change those events, as they are already set in stone. Also, any change in the future would mean he didn't really know in the past exactly what was going to happen in the future. In short, a God who knows exactly what the future will hold is likewise powerless to change it. So if nothing can change, how exactly does God answer prayer again? Christians also believe God is eternal and never changing. Taking that at face value and following it to its logical conclusion, a zillion years before creation, God would have already made up his mind on every future decision he might face, meaning he can never change his mind in the future. So again, if God can never change his mind, how does prayer actually change anything? Christians also believe in a God that has a plan for each and every one of us. We've all heard this dozens of times. Every step of our life has been mapped out ahead of time, and nothing in the plan is bad for us or needs changing. Let's agree with the Christians on this and see where that one leads. Exactly. If God already has every minute of every day of our life planned out from all eternity, and since He can't change His plans because He's God, then innocently ask your Christian friends why they pray to God to change His divine, all-knowing plans. Once again, by taking the momentum of the Christian's own claims and running them to their logical conclusion, the Christians themselves might see the absurdity of their own claims. Personal experiences. Ignoring for now that Christians have a do-nothing couch potato deity, and that therefore no miracles can be done, what did Jesus say about miracles? I, Jesus, tell you the solemn truth. The person who believes in me will perform the miraculous deeds that I am doing, and will perform greater deeds than these. Here is another perfect chance to use judo and let the Christian see for himself. Rather than squaring off against him, sidestep him and have him demonstrate the truth of what Jesus solemnly promises here. Because he really wants to believe Jesus, right? Invite your Christian friend over to your house, then ask him to do some bigger miracles than Jesus did, so that you can believe too and join them both in heaven. He does believe what Jesus promised, doesn't he? And once again, the failure of his religion will be demonstrated by himself, far better than you could ever argue it. Via the tactic of, for the sake of argument, let's assume the Bible's true, we can work within the Christian worldview, thereby not arguing against the Christian, but rather just trying to get him to study his own Bible. With this judo using their own weight and momentum against them, they can see for themselves what we can't argue them into. That claimed miracles are just that, mere claims. In the Christian worldview, the whole problem with private miracles is that Christians worship a fair God that wouldn't give miracles to some, but not to others. We read in the Bible, and you can follow along on the slide, from Acts 10:34, God does not show favoritism in dealing with people. New English Translation. God treats everyone on the same basis. Good News Translation. And God shows no partiality and is no respecter of persons, from the Amplified Bible. Conversion-level private miracles to a select few, thus almost guaranteeing heaven for them, and the withholding of miracles from the vast majority of mankind, thus damning them to hell, is impossible in the Christian worldview of a fair God who does not play favorites. Given that these miracles Christians claim for themselves cannot be from their God, since God is fair and just, ask your Christian friend just where are these miracles from then? Christians are certainly hungry for and seeking after miracles and signs. Just look at all this Christian literature. What does it all mean? Well, Jesus had an opinion on these kind of people who seek after signs. Jesus said, quote, "An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign." Again, having the Christian confronted with his own Bible might force him to conclusions that mere arguments never could. He will have to conclude that Jesus is either lying here, or that all these Christians blathering on about miracles in their lives, signs and wonders, must be, per the words of Jesus, evil. When it comes to the perfection of their gods, when it comes to prayer, and when it comes to personal experiences, in summation, when it comes to your Christian friends, rather than always arguing against their ideas, occasionally, for the sake of argument, agree with them, then see where these ideas end up. To recap, perfection. If a God is perfect, then he does nothing. Prayer. If God does nothing, then he also doesn't answer prayers. Personal experiences. If God doesn't answer any prayers, then he certainly doesn't answer prayers requesting miracles. In short, the Christian may now be on the road to concluding on his own that a God who is perfect, who answers prayers, and grants personal experiences probably does not exist.